Publicly challenged among the elite of a major corporation, a woman invisible to the system does something none of them expected, and it changes everything, without anyone noticing, until it's too late.
The Chicago sky was painted in shades of orange and purple as the sun set behind the skyscrapers. On the 28th floor of the most imposing building on Michigan Avenue, executives of Mitchell Corp celebrated with expensive champagne flutes and rehearsed smiles. The reflection of the city lights danced on the mirrored glass walls of the hall, creating an atmosphere of wealth and power that perfectly matched the Italian suits and designer dresses circulating through the environment. Emily Davidson adjusted the black vest over the white shirt of her waitress uniform, discreetly observing her reflection in the service elevator door. At 32, she had become an expert at going unnoticed. Brown hair pulled back in a simple bun, minimal makeup, lowered eyes. Invisibility was her armor. She firmly held the silver tray with champagne flutes and took a deep breath before pushing the door and entering the hall. "Remember, you're just here to serve and observe," she murmured to herself as she glided among the guests with the silent grace she had perfected over the past 3 years. The animated chatter filled her ears as she circulated offering drinks. Fragments of conversations about mergers, acquisitions, and the financial market floated around her. She absorbed every word with discreet attention, her brain automatically translating technical terms and corporate jargon. "This deal with the Chinese will revolutionize our position in the Asian market," commented a female executive in a red blazer to her colleague. "They say Carter closed it under surprisingly favorable conditions." Emily served another round of drinks, moving with calculated efficiency. Her gaze caught the figure of Carter Mitchell at the center of the room, surrounded by admirers like a sun, orbited by smaller planets. At 40, the CEO of Mitchell Corp exuded confidence in every gesture. Tall, with broad shoulders and the perfect tan of someone who frequents the best beaches, he gestured animatedly while speaking, his Swiss watch gleaming under the hall lights. "Ladies and gentlemen," he suddenly announced, his deep voice silencing the parallel conversations, "tonight is not just about celebrating a business deal. It's about celebrating Mitchell Corp's audacity in conquering territories where American companies rarely dare to tread." Polite applause echoed through the hall. Emily stopped near a column, watching attentively while discreetly arranging the glasses on her tray. "In just 5 years," continued Carter, "we've transformed a family business into a technological powerhouse. And today, we take another step with this strategic partnership with Chen Security." A man with Asian features approached, handing Carter a red leather folder. The CEO opened it with a theatrical flourish, revealing a thick stack of documents covered with Chinese characters. "Our friends from Tian have just given me the official version of the contract," said Carter, raising the papers. "And you know what's most impressive? Our legal department will need at least a week to translate this masterpiece of Chinese bureaucracy." Polite laughter spread through the room. Carter, encouraged by the reaction, continued, "I'm so confident in the excellence of this deal that I'll make a bet." His smile displayed perfectly aligned teeth. "If anyone in this room can translate this document in 24 hours, I'll hand over my own monthly salary as a reward. And believe me, it's not a small amount." More laughter, this time louder. The guests exchanged amused glances, aware of the impossibility of the challenge. Rebecca Vaughn, the financial director, a 50-year-old woman with grey hair cut in an elegant bob, shook her head with an ironic smile. "Carter, you really should stop making bets you know you won't lose. Where would the fun be in that?" he replied with a wink. It was at that moment that something changed in Emily's posture. Her shoulders, normally curved to diminish her presence, straightened. Her eyes, habitually lowered, rose and fixed on the document in Carter's hands. Without realizing it, she had stopped moving, suddenly becoming visible amid the constant flow of people. With deliberate steps, she placed her tray on a nearby table and walked toward the center of the circle. The murmur gradually diminished as guests noticed the waitress approaching the CEO with unexpected determination. "Excuse me," she said, her voice firmer than anyone would expect from a temporary employee. "I accept the challenge." The silence that followed was almost palpable. Carter blinked a few times, as if he needed to process what he had just heard. His smile remained, but his eyes revealed surprise and perhaps a slight touch of irritation at having his moment interrupted. "Pardon?" he asked, alternating between amusement and disbelief. "I said I accept the challenge to translate the document in 24 hours, repeated Emily, maintaining eye contact in a way that defied the entire power dynamic of the room. One of the closest executives let out a nervous laugh. "I think our waitress didn't get the joke, Carter." But Carter studied Emily's face with renewed intensity. "You speak Mandarin?" he asked with a touch of condescension. "Yes," she replied simply. "And I also understand commercial contracts." A murmur ran through the room. Rebecca Vaughan stepped forward, her curiosity overcoming her initial skepticism. "What's your name?" she asked. "Emily Davidson." Carter observed the exchange with growing interest. Then, in a theatrical gesture that captured everyone's attention, he extended the documents toward Emily. "Well, Emily Davidson, let's see what you can do with this." The gazes of all present followed the movement as Emily took the contract. She flipped through the first pages with deliberate calm, her eyes scanning the characters with surprising ease. Then, to everyone's amazement, she began to translate aloud. "Strategic Cooperation Agreement between Mitchell Corporation of Technology and Digital Security and Tian Security International Limited." First clause. The parties agree to establish a strategic alliance for joint development of advanced biometric authentication technologies, focusing on facial and fingerprint recognition for applications in corporate and governmental security. Her voice was clear and precise, without hesitation, translating technical terms with the naturalness of someone who knew them intimately. As she progressed, Carter's face transformed from amused to perplexed, and finally to something close to admiration. When Emily paused after translating the first page, the silence in the room was absolute. No one dared to interrupt, as if they were witnessing an inexplicable phenomenon. "This is just the beginning," she said, carefully closing the document. "I can deliver the complete translation tomorrow, as proposed." Carter Mitchell, for the first time in a long time, seemed genuinely speechless. His eyes, now free of their usual arrogance, studied Emily as if trying to decipher a complex enigma. "Who are you, really?" he asked in a voice low enough that only she and those closest could hear. Emily held his gaze for a moment before responding. "Just someone who accepts impossible challenges, Mr. Mitchell." A discreet flash illuminated the moment. Someone had captured the scene with a cell phone. Before Carter could respond, the marketing director approached, breaking the moment. "Carter, the Tian representatives are waiting for the official photo." The CEO nodded, still absorbing what he had just witnessed. "We'll continue this conversation," he said to Emily, handing her the document. "Tomorrow, at 10 o'clock, in my office." As he walked away, Emily felt the curious and surprised gazes that followed her. The invisible waitress had become, in a matter of minutes, the center of attention. Holding the contract close to her chest, she knew her life was about to change drastically. And somewhere in the hall, a finger pressed send, and the video of her unlikely demonstration began its journey through the company's digital channels, initiating a wave that no one could predict. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The small apartment on Chicago's west side was bathed in dim light. Only a desk lamp projected a yellowish circle on the worn wooden dining table. Sitting before it, Emily sighed as she undid the tight bun, letting her brown hair fall over her shoulders. The digital clock on the shelf marked 11:47 p.m., but the night was just beginning for her. Carefully, she spread the pages of the Tian security contract on the table and turned on her old laptop. The device took a few seconds to wake up, emitting a characteristic noise that had become an old companion during silent nights. While waiting, her fingers drummed on the document, as if already anxious to unravel its secrets. "Let's see what you really hide," she murmured to the contract, as if conversing with an adversary. The small apartment, with its peeling walls and simple furniture, contrasted dramatically with the luxurious office where the document had been signed. However, there were revealing details. A bookshelf filled with books in various languages, academic certificates carefully stored in a folder, and old photographs in small frames. One showing a younger Emily, in cap and gown, beside an older woman with a proud smile. She opened a text editing program and began to work, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she translated page after page. Occasionally, she consulted a specialized dictionary or made notes in a notebook beside her. The hours passed, marked only by the occasional sip of coffee and the soft sound of rain that had begun to fall outside. On the opposite wall, an improvised mural displayed old newspaper clippings. Though distant, it was possible to distinguish headlines about protests, press freedom, and a recurring face, a middle-aged man with the same penetrating eyes as Emily. At the foot of the mural, a partially packed small suitcase suggested the constant possibility of departure. Around 3 in the morning, Emily took a break, rubbing her tired eyes. She stood up to stretch her legs and walked to the window, observing the city that never completely slept. Lights blinked in the distance, and the rain created hypnotic patterns on the glass. "Chicago," she whispered, resting her forehead on the cold glass. "I never thought I'd hide in plain sight." Her cell phone vibrated on the table, making her quickly return. The message was from her former university advisor, Professor Elizabeth Morgan. "Got your email. I have some references that might help with the specific technical terms. Be careful, Em. I don't know what you're doing, but I recognize when you're in deep waters." Emily smiled melancholically. Elizabeth had been one of the few people she still maintained contact with from her academic past. Without going into details, she had asked for help with some specific terminology of legal Mandarin, knowing she could trust the professor's discretion. Returning to the table, Emily opened the email with the references sent by Elizabeth and dived back into the translation. It was when she reached the third attachment of the contract that her entire body tensed. She reread the section 3 times, each reading confirming her initial suspicions. "It can't be," she murmured, sitting more erect. The section was carefully constructed in ambiguous language, hidden between seemingly harmless clauses about technical collaboration and infrastructure sharing. To inattentive eyes or automatic translators, it would go unnoticed, but for someone with her knowledge, the intention was clear. Tian Security would have unrestricted access to Mitchell Corp's databases, complete access to main and secondary servers for security optimization purposes, including but not limited to firewall configurations, encryption protocols, and storage structures of end-user data, she translated aloud, feeling a shiver run down her spine. Quickly, Emily opened a new window and researched Tian Security. The first pages of results showed a respectable company with a presence in dozens of countries. But as she deepened her research, she found more obscure articles mentioning possible links to mass surveillance programs and accusations of industrial espionage. "They're not looking for a partnership," she murmured to herself. "They're looking for a backdoor to the data." The implications were enormous. Mitchell Corp managed security systems for dozens of American banks, telecommunications companies, and even some government institutions. Unrestricted access would mean exposing sensitive data of millions of Americans. Emily opened a protected folder on her computer and began to elaborate a detailed report, highlighting the problematic clauses and explaining their implications in clear terms. She worked with the efficiency of someone accustomed to organizing complex information, transforming technical jargon into accessible language. As the sky began to lighten, she finished the complete translation and finalized the report. She printed everything on her old printer, which protested with strident noises. She organized the documents in a brown envelope she found in the drawer and wrote "Confidential" on the front. Exhausted, she allowed herself a moment of doubt. What she was about to do could place her under the spotlight again, exactly what she had avoided for years. Her gaze wandered to the mural with the clippings about her father, and she felt a knot in her throat. Paul Davidson had been a fearless journalist whose investigation into political corruption had forced him into exile. The entire family had paid the price for his courage. Her cell phone vibrated again. This time, it was a notification from a group of temporary employees of Mitchell Corp. Someone had shared the video from the cocktail party, showing the moment she had challenged Carter Mitchell. The message said, "Our colleague shutting up the big boss. I've never seen Carter speechless like that." Emily closed her eyes for a moment. There was no turning back. Her face was exposed, her knowledge revealed. The invisibility that had protected her for so long was dissipating like fog under the rising sun. "If I'm to be seen," she said to herself, "let it be for something worth it." She took a quick shower and put on the only formal outfit she owned. Simple black pants and a white blouse, the same ones she wore for job interviews. She tied her hair in a low bun and, after a moment of hesitation, put on the small pearl earrings her mother had given her. A silent reminder of who she really was. Before leaving, she sent a message to Ryan Andrews, her contact at the temporary work agency. "Won't be able to work at today's event. Urgent matter at Mitchell Corp. Sorry for the inconvenience." The bus ride to the financial center was long. Emily observed the city awakening through the window, feeling a strange combination of determination and apprehension. In her lap, the brown envelope seemed to weigh tons. When she finally arrived at the imposing Mitchell Corp building, it was already past 9 o'clock. The lobby was full of executives and employees, all rushing in their morning routines. Emily took a deep breath, adjusted the envelope under her arm, and walked to the reception. "Good morning," she said firmly to the receptionist. "Emily Davidson to see Carter Mitchell. I have an appointment at 10 o'clock. The receptionist consulted the system and nodded. "Yes, Miss Davidson. Mr. Mitchell left instructions to send you up as soon as you arrived. 28th floor, last door on the right." In the elevator, Emily observed her reflection in the metal doors. There were dark circles under her eyes due to the sleepless night, but her gaze conveyed an intensity she hadn't seen in a long time. For a brief moment, she recognized in that reflection the brilliant young academic she had once been, the promising doctoral candidate in linguistics, whose career had been interrupted by circumstances beyond her control. "Just facts," she murmured to herself as the elevator rose. "No emotions, no personal stories, just what's in the contract." The 28th floor was quiet when the doors opened. She walked down the navy blue carpeted corridor, passing glass offices where executives gestured in morning meetings. Some looked in her direction, recognizing her from the video that was already circulating internally. Upon reaching the indicated meeting room, Emily paused for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision she had made. Through the glass, she could see Carter Mitchell standing, gesturing as he spoke with Rebecca Vaughn and 3 other executives. Everyone seemed tense, except Carter, who maintained his confident posture as always. Emily adjusted her posture, held the envelope firmly, and knocked on the glass door. All heads turned in her direction. For an instant, she saw the surprise in Carter's eyes. Perhaps he hadn't really expected her to appear. With a gesture, he invited her to enter. "Gentlemen, ladies," said Carter with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "I believe you all know Emily Davidson, our unexpectedly talented translator." Emily entered the room with firm steps, aware that each person there was evaluating her, trying to understand how a simple temporary waitress had suddenly become an important piece in the corporate game. "I've brought something you need to see urgently," she said, ignoring the formalities, and she placed the envelope on the glass table, knowing that its contents had the power to change the course of many lives, including her own. A tense silence hung over the meeting room as all gazes alternated between the brown envelope on the table and Emily's determined face. Through the wide windows, the morning sun illuminated the scene, creating reflections on the glass top of the oval table. Carter Mitchell was the first to react, his expression oscillating between curiosity and impatience. Wearing an impeccable navy blue suit that highlighted his imposing figure, he crossed his arms over his chest. "So, Miss Davidson, I see you took my challenge seriously," he commented with a slight smile. "I confess I'm surprised by your dedication." Emily maintained her composure, ignoring the condescending tone. "It's not about the challenge, Mr. Mitchell. It's about the content of the contract." Rebecca Vaughan, the financial director, leaned forward with genuine interest. With her 50 years and decades of corporate experience, she had developed a sixth sense for potential problems. "What exactly are we talking about?" asked Rebecca, adjusting her thin-framed glasses. Without hesitation, Emily opened the envelope and distributed copies of her report to each person at the table. "I translated the complete document," she explained, with a clear and professional voice. "But there's something specific that requires immediate attention." The executives began to leaf through the report, with expressions ranging from skepticism to growing concern. Carter remained standing, his dark eyes fixed on Emily, as if trying to decipher a complex puzzle. "Page 17, third attachment," indicated Emily. "The clause seems harmless at first glance, but the linguistic construction in Mandarin creates a deliberate ambiguity." Edward Miller, the legal director, a 60-year-old man with grey hair and a perpetually cautious expression, was the first to find the mentioned page. His eyebrows arched as he read. "Does this say what I think it says?" he asked, suddenly alert. Emily nodded. "If signed in this form, the contract grants Tian Security practically unrestricted access to Mitchell Corp's data infrastructure, not just for the purposes of implementing the joint security system, but to all stored data, including customer information." The murmur that followed was interrupted by the cutting voice of Gabriel Foster, the young technology director, who hit the table with the palm of his hand. "This is absurd. Our lawyers reviewed this document." "In English," corrected Emily. "The English version you received probably doesn't contain this clause, or it's worded differently. The official version, in Mandarin, is this one I translated." Rebecca Vaughan visibly paled. "If this is true, we would be handing over access to banking data, personal information of millions of customers, and potentially exposing security vulnerabilities in government institutions that use our systems," completed Edward, now frantically leafing through the report. During all this time, Carter remained strangely silent, his analytical gaze never leaving Emily's face. Finally, he moved, picking up a copy of the report and examining it carefully. "How can I be sure your translation is accurate?" he asked, his tone more cautious than accusatory. Emily held his gaze. "I have a PhD in linguistics with a specialization in Mandarin from the University of Chicago. My thesis was on linguistic ambiguities in international contracts between the United States and China." She paused, realizing she had revealed more than she initially intended. "I can provide academic contacts who will validate my translation if necessary." The revelation caused another murmur in the room. Carter narrowed his eyes. "And how does someone with those credentials end up serving drinks at corporate events?" The question hung in the air like a veiled accusation. Emily felt defenses rise automatically, years of protecting her past, creating an almost palpable barrier. "My personal circumstances are not relevant to the discussion," she responded coolly. "What matters is the content of this contract and the risk it poses to your company and to the Americans whose data you protect." A tense silence followed, broken only by the sound of Edward Miller typing furiously on his tablet. "I'm checking our files," he explained. "The English version we received, yes, here it is. The wording is completely different. It only mentions limited technical access for implementation purposes. A deliberate fraud, concluded Rebecca, her face now a mask of indignation. They tried to deceive us with a false translation. Carter walked to the window, observing the city for a moment, his reflection in the glass showing a thoughtful expression that few in the company had ever witnessed. When he turned, something had changed in his posture. "I'll cancel the final signing," he declared. "Edward, I want a complete analysis of the legal implications of backing out at this stage. Gabriel, evaluate possible vulnerabilities in case they've already had some preliminary access to our systems during negotiations." Everyone nodded, suddenly energized by the emergency of the situation. Carter turned his attention back to Emily. "As for you, I believe I owe you a salary as promised." His tone had lost its previous condescension, replaced by something close to respect. "But I'd like to offer more than that." Emily maintained a neutral expression, waiting. "Mitchell Corp needs people like you," he continued. "Someone with your training and perspicacity. I'd like to offer you a position in the International Compliance Department." The offer caught Emily by surprise, though she made an effort not to show it. Rebecca Vaughan smiled discreetly, clearly approving the idea. "We need to review all our international contracts," added Rebecca, "especially the Asian ones. Your knowledge would be invaluable." Emily hesitated, suddenly feeling exposed. The idea of returning to the corporate world, of using her real name and her real credentials, awakened a mixture of desire and apprehension. "I need to think," she finally responded. "There are complications." Something in the tone of her voice must have alerted Carter, as he studied her with renewed interest. "What kind of complications would make someone with your talent and training hide in temporary jobs?" he asked directly. Before Emily could answer, the door to the meeting room opened abruptly. Mark Thompson, the communications director, entered hastily, his normally composed face now marked by urgency. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but we have a situation. The video from last night's cocktail party leaked beyond the internal groups. It's already on LinkedIn and Twitter, being shared by employees of competing companies." Carter frowned. "Which video exactly?" "The lady here," Mark pointed to Emily, "translating the Chinese contract and leaving everyone speechless. The hashtags have already started. The polyglot waitress. Who I Emily Davidson." Emily felt the blood freeze in her veins. Her full name was circulating on social media, associated with a video that clearly showed her face. Years of careful anonymity were crumbling before her eyes. "This is a problem," she murmured, more to herself than to the others. Carter caught her reaction and surprisingly seemed to understand that there was something more at stake. "Mark, I want that video contained. Use our contacts on the platforms, claim intellectual property issues, do whatever necessary." "It might be too late," responded Mark, showing his tablet. "It already has more than 5,000 shares." Emily felt the room spin slightly. She took her cell phone and saw 3 missed calls from a number she immediately recognized, her mother in Boston. The reality of the situation hit her with full force. "I need to go," she said abruptly, gathering her belongings. "I leave the complete report with you. The critical pages are marked." Carter moved quickly, subtly blocking her path to the door, not in a threatening way, but with determination. "Miss Davidson, it's evident that there's something more happening here." His voice lowered so that only she could hear. "Whatever it is, perhaps we can help. Mitchell Corp has considerable resources and influence." Emily looked at him with a mixture of distrust and surprise. The arrogant man from the cocktail party seemed to have been replaced by someone more perceptive and possibly more human. "Why would you help me?" she asked in a low voice. "Because you just saved my company from a disaster," he responded with simplicity. "And because I recognize value when I see it." Before Emily could respond, her cell phone vibrated again. This time, it was a text message from her mother. "It's happening again. We received visitors asking about you. Be careful." Panic threatened to engulf her, But years of living under pressure had taught her to maintain composure even in the most critical moments. She took a deep breath and looked directly into Carter's eyes. "I need your help," she finally admitted, "but not here, not now." Something in the intensity of her gaze must have communicated the seriousness of the situation, for Carter nodded without further questions. "My private office," he said, taking a business card and writing something on the back. "This is the address. I'll be there at 7 tonight. It's a discreet place." Emily took the card and quickly put it away. With a brief nod to the other executives who observed the interaction with evident curiosity, she left the room with quick steps. In the empty elevator, she allowed herself a moment of pure panic. The past she had left behind was resurfacing, threatening not only her safety but also that of her family, all because she had made the mistake of becoming visible again. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Emily had already made a decision. She couldn't go back to her apartment. It would be the first place they would look for her. She needed a plan, resources, and perhaps, against all her inclinations, she needed to trust someone. She left the building into the strong Chicago sun, blending into the crowd of executives and employees circulating through the financial center. For now, she was just another anonymous person on the busy streets of the largest city in the Midwest. But how long would that anonymity last now that her face and name were circulating on social media? The cold wind that blew between the skyscrapers seemed to whisper a warning. The past always finds a way back. And as she walked hurriedly down Michigan Avenue, Emily knew that the true battle was just beginning. The rain fell incessantly over Chicago when Emily got out of the taxi in front of a discreet building in the Gold Coast. Unlike the glass skyscrapers of the financial center, that three-story Art Deco construction seemed purposely discreet, without any sign or identification. The address Carter had written on the back of his card corresponded exactly to that place. Emily pulled the collar of her coat to protect herself from the rain and observed the street for a moment, making sure she hadn't been followed. The last hours had been a whirlwind. After leaving Mitchell Corp, she had taken refuge in a public library, using the computers to monitor social media and send coded messages to her mother in Boston. The video continued to spread, and her name generated more and more online searches. Taking a deep breath, she climbed the few steps to the door and rang the bell. A discreet camera above the doorframe turned in her direction, and seconds later, the door opened. To her surprise, it wasn't Carter who received her, but Rebecca Vaughn. "Come in quickly," said the financial director, her tone urgent. "We're on the second floor." The interior of the building revealed itself to be surprisingly modern, contrasting with the traditional facade. Emily followed Rebecca through a marble-floored corridor to an elevator. "This is Carter's personal office," explained Rebecca as they went up. "Few Mitchell employees know of its existence. He uses it for sensitive negotiations and situations that require discretion." When the elevator doors opened, Emily found herself in a spacious open area that combined office and residence. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, while the rain created hypnotic patterns on the glass. Carter was standing next to a center table, analyzing documents spread across it. Beside him, Gabriel Foster, the technology director, was working intensely on a laptop. "You came," said Carter, raising his eyes. There was something different in his posture, the usual arrogance replaced by focused seriousness. "I didn't have much choice," responded Emily, approaching cautiously. Carter gestured toward the documents on the table. As she approached, Emily recognized with a start it was her life, spread out in papers, her academic record from the University of Chicago, newspaper clippings about her father, documents from her time as a researcher, even old photographs from university debate competitions. "How did you get this?" she asked, her voice betraying surprise and indignation. "We have resources," responded Carter simply. Then, noticing her expression, he added, "We're not investigating you with bad intentions, Emily. We're trying to understand the situation to be able to help." Gabriel turned his laptop toward her. On the screen, an old report showed her father, Paul Davidson, at a press conference. "Your father was one of the most respected investigative journalists in the country," said Gabriel. "His articles on corruption in the Massachusetts state government caused a political earthquake 8 years ago." Emily felt her throat tighten with painful memories. "And they also cost him his career, his security, and almost his life." "And you, your future," completed Rebecca gently, pointing to another document, a letter from the university accepting Emily into a postdoctoral program she never got to attend. A heavy silence settled in the room, broken only by the sound of rain against the windows and the occasional rumble of thunder in the distance. Emily walked to one of the windows, observing the city shine under the storm. Finally, she made a decision. "You already know part of the story," she said, turning to face them. "I'll tell you the rest." During the next hour, Emily narrated the events that had transformed her life. How her father, after publishing a series of reports exposing a scheme of public fund embezzlement, began to receive threats. How their house was invaded, documents stolen. How the family car was sabotaged, resulting in an accident that left her mother with permanent sequelae. "When we realized the threats were beginning to extend to me, we made a difficult decision," she explained, her voice firm despite the turbulent emotions. "My father accepted a position at a Spanish newspaper and took my mother to Europe. I chose another path." "You disappeared," concluded Carter. Emily nodded. "I abandoned my almost completed doctorate. I moved to Chicago, where no one knew me. I adopted a low profile, avoided social media, worked in temporary jobs that didn't require much background verification. I built a life in invisibility." "Until last night," observed Rebecca. "Until last night," agreed Emily with a sigh. "A moment of wounded pride, and I knocked down years of precautions." Carter, who had been listening attentively, approached her. "What do you fear exactly? Those involved in the scheme your father denounced have already been prosecuted, from what I remember." "Some were," responded Emily. "Others remained in the shadows, powerful people who never appeared in the headlines, but who swore they would make my father pay for having exposed the scheme. People with connections and resources to fulfill their threats, even years later." Gabriel, who had been typing while Emily spoke, called everyone's attention. "I found something interesting," he said. "In the last 12 hours, since the video began to circulate, there have been 3 attempts to access your academic record in the University of Chicago system, and 2 detailed searches about you in the IRS database." Emily paled. "They're already looking for me." "And they're not the only ones," added Gabriel, showing another screen. "Journalists, too. The mysterious PhD who works as a waitress has already become a subject in at least 2 news portals." Carter frowned, clearly processing information and possibilities. Then, to everyone's surprise, he went to a small bar in the corner of the room and served 4 glasses of whiskey. "I think we all need this," he said, giving a glass to each one. When he reached Emily, their eyes met for a moment longer than necessary. "You saved my company today. Now it's our turn to return the favor." Emily accepted the drink with hesitation. "Why? You barely know me." Carter took a sip before responding. "Let's say I have my own reasons for valuing people who stand up to the powerful." An enigmatic smile appeared on his lips. "Besides, I just lost an expensive bet to you. The least I can do is ensure you're around to remind me of that." The comment broke the tension, drawing a small smile even from Emily. Rebecca took advantage of the moment to intervene with her characteristic pragmatism. "Let's get to the facts," she said, placing her glass on the table. "We have a linguistics expert being pursued because of denunciations her father made years ago. At the same time, we have a company that just discovered an attempt at industrial espionage in an international contract. What if we combine these problems into a single solution?" Everyone turned to her, intrigued. "We officially hire Emily," continued Rebecca, "not as a compliance employee, but as an external consultant for linguistic security. We give her a new corporate apartment with security, a remote office, and freedom to work on her own terms." "And what about my family?" asked Emily. "We can extend protection to them in Spain," responded Carter promptly. "Mitchell has a branch in Madrid. It wouldn't be difficult to justify additional security for family members of an important consultant." Emily felt a wave of emotion she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Still, the distrust cultivated for so long didn't easily dissipate. "And what do you gain from this?" Carter exchanged a look with Rebecca before responding. "Frankly, your expertise. The fiasco with Chen Security made me realize how vulnerable we are in international negotiations. We need someone who understands not just the language, but the cultural and legal nuances." "And," added Rebecca with a touch of irony, "you save us from an immense public embarrassment. Arrogant CEO humiliated by waitress is not exactly the headline we want associated with Mitchell Corp." The observation drew a short laugh from Emily, surprising even herself. It had been a long time since she had laughed like that. "All right," she finally said. "I accept the offer with one condition." "Which?" asked Carter. "Complete autonomy. I work my way, establish my own hours, and have the authority to question any document or decision that seems suspicious. No bureaucracy, no hierarchies." Carter extended his hand. "Deal." As they shook hands, a lightning bolt dramatically illuminated the room, as if sealing the agreement with its own celestial signature. For a moment, Carter and Emily's eyes remained connected, each evaluating the other with new understanding. Gabriel interrupted the moment, calling them to his laptop. "We have another situation," he said, showing a series of internal company messages. "The Tien security representative is demanding an urgent meeting. Apparently, they are concerned about the unexpected delay in the final signing." "What do we respond?" asked Rebecca. Carter looked at Emily, a new respect evident in his gaze. "What does our intercultural communication expert suggest?" Emily felt the weight of the trust placed in her. It was a strange sensation after years living in the shadows, but not an unpleasant one. "Don't respond yet," she said after a moment of reflection. "Let them get anxious. Meanwhile, prepare a counter-proposal that completely eliminates the problematic clause and adds explicit protections for our data." "They'll never accept it," observed Gabriel. "It's not for them to accept," responded Emily with a small smile. "It's for them to know we've discovered their game. The goal isn't to save the agreement, but to exit it with our dignity and data intact." Carter smiled, clearly impressed. "I like your style, Miss Davidson." "Emily," she corrected. "If we're going to work together, you can call me Emily." A moment of silent understanding passed between them, interrupted by the ring of Emily's cell phone. When she checked the screen, her expression changed. "It's my mother," she said, walking away to answer. The conversation was brief and tense, in a low voice. When she returned, her expression was grave. "A man was at my parents' old apartment in Boston today, asking questions to the neighbors. My mother found out through a friend who still lives in the building." "We need to act quickly," said Carter, immediately taking control of the situation. "Gabriel, organize a digital security scheme. I want monitoring of any mention of Emily's name or her family online. Rebecca, prepare the documents for immediate hiring." Turning to Emily, his voice softened. "As for you, you can't go back to your apartment tonight. It's not safe." "And where will I go?" she asked, the reality of her precarious situation suddenly evident. Carter hesitated for only a second before responding. "There's a guest room here. You can stay until we resolve your permanent situation." The offer caught her off guard. "Here? In your private office," he completed quickly, "with 24-hour security and restricted access. Probably the safest place in Chicago at the moment." Emily looked out the window, observing the night city dotted with lights under the persistent rain. Somewhere out there, people she didn't even know were looking for her, scouring her past, threatening everything she had built. The feeling of vulnerability was overwhelming. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. When their gazes met again, something had changed. The arrogant CEO and the invisible waitress had disappeared. In their place were two people who, despite all their differences, found themselves united by unexpected circumstances and the growing perception that perhaps, just perhaps, they needed each other more than they imagined. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The following weeks brought profound changes for both Emily and Mitchell Corp. The office that Carter had designated for her was on the 27th floor, one floor below the executive board, a symbolism not lost on the employees who observed the new dynamic with growing curiosity. The space was spacious, with windows that offered a panoramic view of the city and shelves that were soon filled with specialized books on linguistics, international law, and data security. That June morning, Emily watched Chicago awaken while reviewing a contract with a German company. The sky had that peculiar quality of the Chicago winter, an almost aggressive blue without clouds, that contrasted with the cold, dry air. Dressed in dark dress pants and an emerald green silk blouse, she looked nothing like the invisible waitress from 2 months ago. A soft knock on the door interrupted her concentration. Rebecca Vaughn entered, bringing 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use some caffeine," said the financial director, placing a cup on Emily's desk. "The tech people said you sent emails at 5 in the morning." Emily smiled, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Old habits. I've always been more productive in the early hours." Rebecca sat in the chair in front of the desk, studying Emily with that perceptive look that intimidated young executives, but which Emily had learned to appreciate. "How are your parents?" "Better," replied Emily, a touch of relief in her voice. "The security at the condominium in Madrid has made them feel more at ease. My mother has even started painting again, something she hadn't done since the accident." In the 2 months since Emily had accepted Carter's proposal, Mitchell Corp had discreetly extended its protection to the Davidson family, an apartment in a secure condominium in Madrid, constant digital monitoring, and the assurance that any threat would be taken seriously. Paul Davidson, initially suspicious of corporate help, had gradually accepted the new arrangement, especially after Emily explained how the company had handled the attempted espionage by Tian Security. "And what do you think of him?" Rebecca suddenly asked, with a curious gleam in her eyes. "Of whom?" "Of Carter, of course." Emily felt a slight warmth rise up her neck, annoyed at her own reaction. "He's different than I expected." Rebecca let out a light laugh. "That's too diplomatic for someone as direct as you." The two women had developed an unexpected friendship in recent weeks. Rebecca, with her decades of experience in the corporate world, had become an informal mentor to Emily, helping her navigate the complexities of Mitchell Corp. "He's complex," Emily elaborated after a moment. "The public image doesn't match the man I've come to know. I expected constant arrogance, but I found someone capable of listening, of changing his mind, of—" She hesitated. "Of caring," suggested Rebecca with a knowing smile. Before Emily could respond, her phone rang. It was Gabriel Foster, the technology director. "Emily, I need you to come to the lab now," he said without preamble. "We found something on the servers that you need to see." 10 minutes later, Emily entered Mitchell Corp's data processing center, a refrigerated environment filled with humming servers and screens displaying lines of code. Gabriel, with dark circles that indicated sleepless nights, pointed to a monitor. "Remember when you suggested we check if Tian had left any traces in our systems during the negotiations?" he asked. "We found this hidden in one of the backup servers." On the screen, a sequence of commands indicated systematic attempts to access protected areas of the system. "They really tried," murmured Emily, feeling a wave of validation. "Even before the contract was signed. And that's not all," continued Gabriel. "We traced the origin of the accesses, They didn't come directly from Tian. He opened another file, showing a map of digital connections. They used an intermediary, an apparently legitimate consulting company called Global Solutions. The name sent a chill through Emily. "Show me the registration of this company." Gabriel seemed surprised by the urgency in her voice, but obeyed. When the data appeared on the screen, Emily confirmed her suspicion. Among the directors of Global Solutions was a familiar name, Richard Montgomery, former finance secretary of the Massachusetts state government, one of the men exposed in her father's reports years ago. "It's not a coincidence," she said, her mind quickly processing the implications. Tien didn't choose Mitchell Corp just for its market value. They were directed. Before she could elaborate, the lab door opened and Carter entered. Wearing an impeccable grey suit that contrasted with his tired face, he seemed to have come straight from an important meeting. "Rebecca told me you were here," he explained. "What have you discovered?" Emily and Gabriel quickly explained the situation. As they understood the ramifications, Carter's expression darkened. "You're saying we were the target of a coordinated operation?" he asked. "That these men from Massachusetts used a Chinese company to get to you through my company?" "It's a theory," Emily responded cautiously, "but it would explain why, of all American technology companies, Tien chose Mitchell Corp for this strategic partnership." Carter ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture that revealed his frustration. "And I almost fell into the trap." "All of us did," corrected Gabriel. No one questioned the deal until Emily appeared. A thoughtful silence fell over the trio, broken only by the constant hum of the servers. Finally, Carter made a decision. "Gabriel, I want a complete report on all access attempts. Document everything, but keep this between us for now." Turning to Emily, his tone softened. "As for you, I think we need to talk in private." Minutes later, they were in Carter's office, a minimalist space on the 28th floor with a view of Lake Michigan in the distance. Unlike his private office in the Gold Coast, this was an impeccable corporate environment designed to impress clients and intimidate competitors. "You were right from the beginning," said Carter, serving water for both of them, "about the contract, about Tian's intentions, and now it seems you were right about the danger you faced." Emily observed the city through the window, feeling the weight of the latest revelations. "I didn't imagine they would go to this extent, using an international corporation for personal revenge. It's almost admirable in a perverse way." "What worries me," continued Carter, approaching to stand beside her at the window, "is what they'll do now that the original plan has failed." Their gazes met in the reflection of the glass. In the last 2 months, something had changed between them. The initial distrust had transformed into mutual respect and gradually into something more complex and indefinable. Working together on sensitive projects, sharing late meals while reviewing documents, occasionally discussing literature or politics when fatigue made work impossible. An intimacy had developed at the margins of their professional relationship. "I have something to show you," said Carter suddenly, breaking the contemplative moment. He walked to his desk and pressed a button on the phone. "Sophie, can you bring the Aurora project, please?" Minutes later, his assistant entered with a sealed folder. When she left, Carter handed the folder to Emily. "This is a project I initiated 6 weeks ago," he explained. "I wanted to be sure it was viable before sharing it with you." Intrigued, Emily opened the folder and found documents detailing a new Mitchell Corp initiative, a diversity and inclusion program focused on hiring people with invisible talents, highly qualified professionals who, due to various circumstances, had been marginalized in the job market. "Project Aurora?" she asked, leafing through the pages with growing interest. "Because it brings to light what was in the shadows," responded Carter with a small smile. "The idea came up after that night at the cocktail party. I kept thinking about how many Emilys are out there. Brilliant people working in functions far below their capabilities because the system failed them. The initiative included partnerships with universities, professional reintegration programs, and most surprisingly, a fund for legal protection of professionals persecuted for whistleblowing or activism. This is, Emily searched for words, genuinely touched. Extraordinary. It's just a beginning, said Carter, and I want you to lead the project. The proposal caught her off guard. Me? Why? Because you lived it, because you understand, better than any consultant I could hire, what it means to be professionally invisibilized. He paused, his gaze intensifying. And because you made me see something I had never realized before. What? That I built a company that values appearances over substance, that rewards those who speak the loudest, not necessarily those with the best ideas. He took a step toward her. You changed Mitchell Corp, Emily, and in a way, you changed me too. The moment was interrupted by an urgent knock on the door. Mark Thompson, the communications director, entered without waiting for a response, his normally composed face now marked by evident concern. Sorry for the interruption, he said, but we have an emergency situation. Global Solutions has just issued a statement announcing a strategic partnership with our biggest competitor, NetGuard Systems. And why would that be an emergency? Asked Carter, visibly irritated by the interruption. Because along with the announcement, they released supposedly confidential information about security flaws at Mitchell Corp. They're insinuating that we have critical vulnerabilities in our systems. Emily and Carter exchanged alarmed looks. Is it false information? Asked Emily. Mark hesitated. Some of it is. Others are distortions of real problems that we were in the process of correcting. The question is how they had access to this data. The access we detected, concluded Carter. They didn't get what they wanted through the contract, so they're using what they obtained during the negotiations to attack us publicly. And the market is reacting, added Mark, showing his tablet. Our stocks have already fallen 4% since the announcement, less than an hour ago. Carter immediately took control of the situation. Mark, prepare an official response, transparent but firm. Admit the real problems, explain that they were already being corrected, and make it clear that the other allegations are false. As Mark left to execute the orders, Carter turned to Emily. This is personal now. They're attacking my company to get to you. I'm sorry, she said, feeling a wave of guilt. I never wanted to bring my problems here. To her surprise, Carter smiled. Not the rehearsed smile he displayed in interviews, but something more genuine, almost fierce. Don't apologize. They made a mistake. Which one? They underestimated both of us. He picked up the phone again. Sophie, call an emergency meeting with the complete executive board, and then call Dr. Jenkins from the legal office. Tell him we need him and his best team immediately. Turning to Emily, his eyes shone with determination. You taught me something valuable, Emily. Sometimes the best defense isn't to remain invisible, but to become so visible that no one dares touch you. In that moment, watching Carter mobilize the company's resources with calculated efficiency, Emily felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The certainty that she was no longer alone in her fight, and perhaps, just perhaps, she had found someone who saw her, really saw her, for the first time in a long time. The conference room on the 28th floor of Mitchell Corp was buzzing with contained energy. Executives in formal attire conversed in low voices, creating a constant murmur that filled the environment. Through the wide windows, the setting August sun tinged Chicago with golden and orange tones, giving an almost dramatic air to the scene. Emily discreetly adjusted the delicate necklace around her neck, a gift from her parents, sent from Madrid the previous week to celebrate her birthday. In the last 3 months, her transformation had been complete, from the invisible waitress to the respected director of Project Aurora. Her posture, her clothes, even her tone of voice had changed, not by external imposition, but by a reconnection with the confident woman she had been before needing to hide. Carter entered the room with determined steps, accompanied by Rebecca and the company's lawyers. The murmur ceased immediately as he took his place at the head of the oval table. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his tone formal but energetic. As you all know, in recent weeks we have faced coordinated attacks against our reputation and our systems. Today, we are here to finalize our strategic response. The crisis triggered by the Global Solutions Statement had intensified. What had begun as insinuations about security vulnerabilities had evolved into a systematic defamation campaign, with fabricated leaks appearing on specialized blogs and anonymous comments on technology forums. Dr. Jenkins, Carter gestured to the senior lawyer, please update everyone on the legal situation. The lawyer, a 60-year-old man with grey hair and a serene expression, adjusted his glasses before speaking. We obtained the injunction we requested. Starting tomorrow, Global Solutions is legally prohibited from making any public statement about Mitchell Corp without verifiable evidence. A murmur of approval ran through the room. Carter nodded and continued. Gabriel, the situation of our systems. The technology director smiled for the first time in weeks. All identified vulnerabilities have been corrected. We implemented the new security protocol in record time. In fact, he cast a grateful look at Emily. Thanks to Dr. Davidson's suggestion, our systems are now more secure than they've ever been. Excellent, responded Carter. Mark, how are we on the communications front? The communications director consulted his tablet before responding. The transparency strategy is working. Our official response had a positive repercussion, and the main market analysts are already changing their recommendations from sell to hold or even buy. This brings us to the next step, said Carter, his gaze sweeping the room before fixing on Emily. The offensive. During the weeks of the crisis, Emily had worked tirelessly behind the scenes, not only helping to strengthen the company's systems, but also investigating the connections between Global Solutions, Chen Security, and her father's old enemies. With the discreet help of trusted journalists and digital security experts, she had assembled an alarming puzzle. "Emily," called Carter, "you have the floor." She rose calmly, feeling all eyes turn to her. 6 months ago, such attention would have made her retreat to the shadows. Now, she received it as a necessary tool. What we discovered goes beyond a simple retaliation against me or an attempt at industrial espionage, she began, activating the presentation on the large monitor. It's about a sophisticated operation to compromise digital security systems in strategic American companies. In the following slides, Emily revealed how Global Solutions had attempted the same type of infiltration in at least 3 other technology companies in the country, always using international partners as a facade. In each case, the method was similar. Contracts with ambiguous clauses that would allow unrestricted access to sensitive data. The ultimate goal seems to be the creation of backdoors in security systems that protect critical infrastructures, banks, telecommunications, even some government facilities, she explained. We're not dealing just with personal revenge or corporate espionage, but potentially with national security. The revelation caused a heavy silence in the room. It was Rebecca who verbalized what everyone was thinking. This is much bigger than we imagined. Exactly, agreed Carter, standing up to join Emily. And that's why our response also needs to be bigger. He activated the next slide, revealing the Aurora Project logo, now expanded to include a collaborative digital security initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially announcing the creation of the Aurora Consortium, an alliance between Mitchell Corp and other technology companies to share information about cyber threats and develop joint security protocols. The proposal was audacious, to transform the attack into an opportunity to strengthen not only Mitchell Corp, but the entire American digital security ecosystem. Instead of an isolated battle against adversaries in the shadows, Carter proposed bringing the conflict into the light, where transparency would become their greatest protection. And to lead this consortium, he continued, his gaze meeting Emily's with an intensity that didn't go unnoticed by those present. No one is more qualified than Dr. Emily Davidson, whose experience in identifying hidden threats has already saved our company once. The announcement was received with enthusiastic applause. While the executives animatedly discussed the next steps, Carter discreetly touched Emily's elbow, guiding her to a more reserved corner of the room. "Are you sure about this?" she asked in a low voice. "Putting me as the public leader of an initiative of this size means maximum visibility," he completed. "Exactly what you avoided for years." "I know." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the corporate masks fell. They were no longer the CEO and the consultant, but two people who had traveled a long way together in recent months. "Remember what you told me when we discovered the connection with Global Solutions?" asked Carter. "That perhaps the best protection isn't hiding, but becoming so visible that attacking you would be too costly." Emily nodded, remembering her own words. "Still, it's a risky bet. Life is a series of bets," he responded with a half-smile. "Some are more worthwhile than others." There was something in his tone, a softness rarely demonstrated in a corporate environment, that made Emily look at him with a new perspective. In the months of working together, they had developed a partnership based on mutual respect, but always maintaining a careful professional distance. However, small moments, a coffee brought without being asked, a late-night message just to check if she was okay, long conversations that went beyond the professional scope, suggested unexplored possibilities. "There's something else we need to discuss," said Carter, his voice lowering even more. "In private. Have dinner with me tonight." Before Emily could respond, Gabriel approached with urgency, his tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this." On the screen, a notification from a major news portal announced, "Exclusive. Documents reveal digital espionage scheme involving former politicians and international companies. Mitchell Corp cited as main target." "Who published this?" asked Emily, surprised. "The Digital Observatory," responded Gabriel, "that specialized blog on cybersecurity. But the strange thing is that they published documents that only we had access to." Carter and Emily exchanged confused looks. "Someone leaked our findings?" At that moment, Emily's cell phone vibrated with a message. When she checked it, she couldn't contain a smile of surprise. "It's from my father," she said, showing the screen to Carter. The message was simple. "Hope you don't mind the help of an old journalist. Some stories need to be told by those who know how to tell them." "Your father?" asked Carter, surprised. "But how did he get—" "The documents I sent to my parents in Madrid," explained Emily, remembering the files she had shared to keep them informed. "He must have used his old contacts in journalism." Gabriel interrupted again. "It's exploding on social media. There's a Global Solutions conspiracy is already a trending topic." The rest of the meeting transpired in a whirlwind of activities. With the story now public, the strategy had to be quickly adapted. Mark Thompson coordinated an official response, confirming the information from the leak, while Carter authorized the controlled disclosure of additional evidence to selected journalists. Hours later, when the office finally began to empty, Emily found herself alone in the conference room, observing the city lights that were turning on in the falling night. The adrenaline of the day was beginning to subside, leaving her with a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. "I thought you had already left." Carter's voice made her turn. He had removed his tie and unbuttoned the collar of his shirt, a rare sign of relaxation. "Still processing everything," she responded. "I didn't expect my father to enter the story in this way." Carter approached, stopping beside her to contemplate the view. "He is a journalist after all, and apparently as determined as his daughter. It's strange," reflected Emily. "I spent years hiding, fearing that the past would catch up with me, and now I'm about to become more visible than I've ever been." "Scary?" "Surprisingly not," she answered with a small smile. "Liberating, actually." They stood in silence for a moment, observing the city. When Carter spoke again, His voice had a different quality, more personal. "Is the dinner invitation still on?" Emily turned to face him, realizing that something had changed between them. The barriers carefully maintained for months seemed to have dissolved with the day's events. "Is it a work dinner?" she asked, allowing herself a slightly provocative tone. Carter smiled, that rare and genuine smile that she had learned to value. "No," he responded simply. "Definitely not work." As they left the building together, passing through the reception where Emily had served drinks months ago, the symmetry of the situation didn't go unnoticed. Life had completed a strange and unexpected cycle, transforming a confrontation born of wounded pride into something much more significant for both. 3 weeks later, the Aurora Consortium was officially launched at an event that brought together leaders from the technology sector, government authorities, and specialized press. On the main stage of the Chicago Convention Center, Emily Davidson, now officially Director of Linguistic and Cultural Security at Mitchell Corp., presented the initiative with the calm confidence of someone who had finally found her place. Digital security in the 21st century is not just about code and firewalls, she explained to the attentive audience. It's about understanding cultural nuances, detecting linguistic ambiguities, and recognizing that the most dangerous threats often hide between the lines. In the front row, Carter observed with evident pride. Beside him, Rebecca leaned in to whisper, "Who would have thought that our greatest discovery would be found serving drinks at a cocktail party?" Carter smiled, his eyes never leaving Emily. Some people shine so brightly that not even the shadows can completely hide them. After the presentation, while they conversed with important guests, Emily felt her cell phone vibrate. It was a message from her mother, a photo of her father watching the live transmission of the event in his apartment in Madrid, with the caption, "I've never seen him so proud." That night, during the reception that followed on the hotel terrace, Emily found a moment of quietude in a more secluded corner. Carter found her there, bringing 2 glasses of champagne. "To the success of the Aurora Consortium," he toasted. "And to new beginnings," she added, touching her glass to his. Under the Chicago stars, with the city shining below them like a reflection of the sky, they shared a moment of silent understanding. The path they had traveled, from arrogant challenge to deep partnership, from distrust to absolute trust, had transformed both in ways that neither could have predicted. "You know what's ironic?" commented Emily, observing the party from a distance. "For years, I thought my security depended on remaining invisible, on never being noticed. Now I understand that true security comes from being fully seen, but by the right people." Carter took her hand, a discreet but significant gesture. "And from seeing clearly, too," he added. "Something you taught me." In the small, dark wooden box on Emily's desk in her new office, a golden plaque gleamed under the morning sunlight. "To Emily Davidson, who taught us to see beyond words." Carter's gift had become a symbol of the new chapter in her life, a life no longer defined by fear and the need to hide, but by the courage to be seen and the freedom to see the world with renewed clarity. And while Chicago continued its frenetic rhythm outside, Emily finally understood the lesson her mother had always tried to teach her. The mind, even in silence, is a powerful weapon. But when it finds its voice and is truly heard, it becomes unstoppable.